By the way, I'll tell you two answers I have had, the best two. One is an exorcism to throw out a devil couldn't be performed by a non-believer. A better try than the one Peter's just come up with, but a bit of a tautology. And the second, that I got only yesterday from a very thoughtful writer of a letter from, I think, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, is could John Donne, one of my favorite poets, along with George Herbert, a religious poet, have written those songs and sermons if he had not been a believer? The answer to that, which has kept me awake longer than any of the other ones, is that I don't know. Because I don't know how Verdi wrote the Requiem while being an atheist either. But I think that the fact that I don't know the answer to the second question means that the answer hasn't been proposed by the proposed answer to the first one, let alone by Peter's lame attempt to complain about the fact that my column is more widely syndicated than his.
Peter, did you want to respond?
Sorry, more widely and promiscuously syndicated than
However widely I was syndicated, I wouldn't want it there.
Well, thank you. That concludes part one of our debate, and as advertised, I think it was provocative as we anticipated. Part two gives you, the audience, the chance to put questions to the brothers. I think they're doing a good job putting questions to each other, but why don't we mix it up a little bit? And if you'll come to the microphones at the end of each aisle, there's also, I believe, a microphone upstairs, although I do not... Okay, it's back in this corner over here. If you would please take your place at the microphone, and let's go ahead and start, since we have a queue over here. Let's go ahead and start with you. Yes, ma'am.
Professor. Hello. Hello. Hello? Okay.
We can hear you.
Professor Hitchens, can you...
Dr. Hitchens.
I heard you correct someone in a previous talk and tell them...
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
Can you speak on what you see as the relationship between self-interest, enlightened self-interest, and morality?
And?
Morality.
The lady, in case it wasn't audible to all, the lady asks if I will comment on the relationship between enlightened self-interest and morality. My line is not that taken by, for example, Ayn Rand, that selfishness is a virtue on its own. I don't believe in the abnegation of the personality. I don't believe in the horrible Christian idea of masochism, modesty, self-sacrifice, self-hatred, the endless confessions of sin and worthlessness, any more than I believe in the equally vile Quranic idea that we're made not out of dust but out of clots of blood by a celestial dictator. But I think that probably we are innately selfish enough to begin with, because of the process of evolution by natural selection, that we don't need additionally to cultivate our own selfishness. And that the trick, the clue, and the odd thing, and the thing that comes to people strangely naturally is this. They understand about human solidarity. I'll just give you two examples, one from each testament. The ancient Jewish people, of course, never went to Sinai and never were in Egypt and never wandered in the desert, and all of that is completely, as everyone now knows from archaeological evidence, none of that ever occurred. But the idea that our Jewish ancestors got as far as Mount Sinai under the impression that rape, murder, theft and perjury were okay, and only when told by tablets that they weren't all right, felt the penny drop or the shekel drop, is, of course, an insult to our decency and our integrity. They couldn't have got that far or been a people of any kind if they had been under any other impression. So this is innate in us, and it comes from our solidarity, our humanity, our brother and sisterhood. The second is from the so-called New Testament, the Samaritan, so-called, the man from Samaria, who wouldn't see someone just lie bleeding and suffering by the side of the road without helping him. Whatever motive he had, and we don't know what it was. He can't have been a Christian, because it's the alleged Jesus of Nazareth telling the story about someone who existed before he did. And the only people in the story who we're told about who didn't do anything for the victim are the priests and the Levites. So what the story tells us, this parable, is you don't need religion to behave with ordinary decency and morality. And anyone who says you do says that you need dictatorial permission to do the right thing. And then you're a serf. It's in my interest that people don't suffer. I don't want someone bleeding to death from AIDS on my doorstep. Not just for their sake, for mine I don't want that. Oscar Wilde in The Soul of Man Under Socialism puts it very beautifully. He says socialism would free us from the awful necessity of living for others. George Bernard Shaw, when he ran for office in London, said there should be no more houses built for the working classes without baths. And it was objected to him by the Tories and the Conservatives. Why give them baths? The poor are so ignorant and stupid, they won't even know how to use them. They'll keep coal in them. They don't deserve baths. You're wasting your compassion on them. He said, I don't want them to have a bath for their sake. I want them to have a bath for my sake. That's the right mix of self-interest and morality. And it works too. It works. It works. Whereas religious exhortation and telling people, telling children that if they don't do the right thing, they'll go to terrifying punishments or unbelievable rewards, that's making a living out of lying to children. That's what the priesthood do. And if all they did was lie to the children, it would be bad enough. But they rape them and torture them and then hope we'll call it abuse. No, the priesthood must get out of the way for this argument to become grown up.
So 2 brief points. The fact that you know something is wrong does not necessarily mean that you don't then do it, as I think most of us are aware. And secondly, it's all very well saying that people who are unbelievers know what is right, but how do they know it's right? What reason do you have to suppose that any action is right, apart from that which suits you? There is none. And you can have none. You may borrow with pleasure the morality of the religious if you wish to do so, but to pretend that by doing so you're not borrowing it is an untruth. And it's amazing how difficult it is to get atheists to understand this very simple point. And one other point about threatening people with terrible punishments. It seems to me to be fairly evident, looking again at my own country, that in societies which do not believe in hell, hell pretty quickly comes into existence.
Bah! You're going to clap that? Who clapped that? Stand up, who clapped that?
Okay, we have other people want to ask questions. Let's move on to our next questioner.